Panthers, we are in for their analysis, and we're going to go through their draw first, and then their pack predictor, and then go into the individual players. Scoop, you're back. This is a beautiful looking spreadsheet here. Talk us through their buys and then their early draw.
Yeah, well, they've got one of the harder draws to start. They start off challenging the Storm's, what is it, 17-year round one winning streak
Yeah, wow.
in that first round. And they've got the Broncos round three and possibly a resurgent Roosters in round four for a bye. And then you've got a bit of an easy run after that. So if you have somebody who's a little bit cheaper by then, who you want for that round 13, potentially might make a little bit of money, that'd be the time to get on other than some of these top guns, of course, which we'll get into.
Beautiful. Yeah, Storm, Eels, your boys, who we think might bounce back a little bit. Broncos. It's gonna be a fun first three games there, and yeah, someone like Cleary. Do you think that early draw matters for someone like him?
I think it matters less for him than someone like Hines. We can be high on Hines because of that really early draw.
Mm-hmm.
But Panthers are the Panthers, and the Panthers have been number one for a while now. And that sort of means their opposition will most of the time bend over backwards against their mighty forward pack and their huge back line. So I think the Storm and the Broncos might be tougher games, but against perhaps, say, the Eels, even if they're resurgent, the Roosters and Sea Eagles, even if the Eels do stick it to them from a points point of view, from a fantasy point of view, they can still do well and dominate. So I think for those elite guns like Yo and Cleary, it's not going to matter much. For some of the other options, it might.
Definitely. And then that pack predictor, there'll be a few sort of younger fellas that we'll mention as well that it could be a decent chance of pushing themselves onto this bench there. But yeah, what you've got there is very much similar to what they finished the year with, right through the finals as well. With Garner playing some time and going on from there. So Leota at 45 minutes there. You got Mitch Kenny playing 65. Do you think that Sonny comes on and plays some more, or do you think he's kind of on the way out?
Yeah, I'm not sure of that one. I think what's going to happen is they're either going to have Garner there or they're going to have Peachy there. And Peachy can cover anything. He's one of these guys who
Mm.
could should have omnipositional status in fantasy, a bit like Kurt Mann. But yeah, he can do anything from playing center to playing hooker to playing middle. So I think whatever happens, Kenny isn't going to play 80. And we saw at times Kenny did move into the middle a bit last year. So I think we might see something similar to that happen again.
Definitely. I think we'll see in that final trial anyway how this pack's going to look. Let's get into the players there. And kicking off up top with Paul Alamotti, who we all had in our sides last year, and it was a fun ride for the most part. Where do you see his role being, and what have you heard on the grapevine?
I haven't heard too much on him, but it's honestly tough to see him stamping his spot in that side straight away. They've got Taylan May, who, yeah, he's coming off an ACL injury, but he had a fantastic year in 2022. And they had Peachy, who came in and played a lot of last year and did quite well. So I think that with Turuva putting in a good shift, that somebody else is probably going to be ahead of Alamotti unless he has a really good preseason. And yeah, he's already 400k, but it is the Panthers, so there could be some uptick.
For sure. You've got Nathan Cleary there at the $1,000,000. It looks funny, but it's 1,000 there. Just to buy him straight up. Are you looking at him as the only gun in that half position, given like Cleary by himself, not Hines? Are you thinking of going both of them? Where's your head at in amongst all that?
I've actually changed my team up a fair bit in regards to that, especially with the Eels hooker news, which gave me probably an extra 200, 300k to work with. So I ended up putting in someone like Moses, who had a really soft draw, and then I wasn't sure I liked that balance, and I did put Hines in, but I think it's going to be really hard to anti-pod Cleary, even if you do go Hines. I think taking Cleary out when we know what he can do is very hard. And he's priced at what he's priced at even though he had like a 19-minute injury game as well, and that would boost his average up to like 75. So
Mm.
I just don't see someone in a three-peat Premiers Panthers team really falling that far.
Yeah, given he's the best in the game. For sure, it makes sense, and the stats just based on ownership makes it very hard to go against him. That's for sure, doesn't it? And yeah, it's definitely a world where you can. Like he's coming off an injury. It seems like it didn't even affect him too much in that grand final. But then, do you have any thoughts on what the World Club Challenge, them going overseas? Do you think that sort of changes too much for them, given it's a really really long flight there and back?
Look, there is potential. If I see somebody who can play half on the bench or in 18th man or something like that, I might get a bit skeptical. But I mean, it is only like the first little bit of the season it would affect.
Yeah.
Maybe the Storm do beat them and continue their super duper round one streak. But the Panthers didn't start off the hottest last year either, and then they
Mm.
revved up and were fine anyway. So Cleary, I still think is going to be a good option. Not there's not many areas you can poke at for a downside.
Yeah, that's right. And then yeah, if he comes out like last year and picks up a 50 odd or 60 to kick things off, we know that it's going to come around. He'll just smash those hundreds, won't he? So yeah, that's Cleary there on that one. You've got Jack Cole there as an Origin watch. Talk us through him.
Yeah, well, this year and well, last year and most years they've had one of or both of Cleary and Luai go and disappear into Origin, and a couple of rookie halves come in and sometimes make some pretty good coin. Like we saw Jack Cogger do that last year. But the thing is, Jack Cogger's gone now. He's gone to the Knights. And so we've got probably the most likely two as Jack Cole and Schneider to be those two halves. Schneider's already priced up a little bit from stuff he did last year and probably won't be much value. But if both of them disappear for Origin, Jack Cole at 230k in a still a pretty good Panthers team, even with a lot of their Origin guns missing, could be somebody that you put in to score you some points in that Origin week and maybe make a little bit of money.
Poor Dane Laurie. He doesn't get any love from the scoop.
I forgot about that, hey. Like
Yeah, got
you've got
him.
Laurie. Yeah, he's flicked there and back, hey.
He's so good.
Yeah.
He was Tiger's best player, and now he's not even going to get close to this Panthers side, is he?
Yeah, it's wild.
Oh god. All right, let's move on. Dylan Edwards, 660. He had a really interesting year, didn't he? He kind of started the year as the best wing fullback, and then by the time people actually wanted to get him in their side, he went downhill deluxe.
Yeah, he fell off a cliff. I can't remember what he ended up priced at, but I think it was somewhere in the mid or low 500s.
Yeah.
And it just anybody who was like, I'm gonna get this bloke a couple of rounds early instead of getting Latrell Mitchell or something like that really suffered from it.
Yeah.
Um, I had a look at why that is the case, and you can sort of see it in games. Like he is this ultimate competitor, backing up everything, being everywhere, but he's often not the person to do it himself or touch the ball last.
Mm.
And for that reason, he doesn't quite get as many assists or tries himself, even though he's got huge run meters, pretty good tackle busts these days, and a couple of other things. So he's just missing one or two stat categories that would tip him over into an elite option.
Definitely. Eisenhuth, yeah, bench guy at best. James Fisher Harris at 584. He had a really strange season as well after getting injured. Had a bit of a shocker before. Yeah, we've seen bigger minute games from him where he's been well above this 42 and a half average. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that there is potentially a little bit of room to go up with Lenny leaving, but I mean Lenny's always been that impact guy, not a monstrous difference to the pack. And Lindsay Smith had a really good year last year, moving into firmly establishing himself in this Panthers side. And I could see something like Leota and Lindsay Smith taking, I guess, more of those minutes if there are more to go around than James Fisher Harris. And so for that reason, I probably can't see him pushing too much higher than where he's priced. Maybe a couple points, but not really someone I'm actively considering.
For sure. Luke Garner as a guy that just needs an injury at this point and then could come relevant, right?
Yeah. Like he's probably going to be bench edge. They liked doing that last season because Martin quite often goes off with 15 to go or has a bit of a rest or does stuff like that. And Sorensen does that a bit as well. It depends how they use Sorensen this year as well, but I don't see much of a world where Luke Garner goes up in value or even holds value unless there are a couple of injuries.
For sure. There's been a little bit of chatter around Maverick Geyer in this preseason so far as well. If he was to jag a bench spot, is he someone worth considering at 230?
Probably not. Like bench edge, as I've said a couple of times, I think in these things is not a good scoring position. Your middles are your high PPM, high work rate areas just because there's more tackles and more stuff happening. They can get the attack, but if you don't get the attack in 25, 30 minutes of play, what are you going to score? 12 points?
Yeah,
It's not going to be very pretty, so not really.
definitely. Harrison Hassett, not someone to look at this point. Liam Henry at 320, you've got him as someone that you would consider more than Maverick Geyer, 90K more expensive.
Yeah, if he's one of the people who might play Spencer Leniu, I think Matt Eisenhuth's probably ahead of him, given that the incumbency he's done, especially taking over the lock role from Yo when he's in Origin, stuff like that. But Liam Henry's done really well in reserve grade and is sort of like Hopgood version 2, stuck behind all these other amazing Panthers, and it's got like a 60 average in reserve grade in about the same minutes. And his couple of NRL opportunities that he's got, his 2 or 3 games, he's absolutely stormed along at like a 1.1 ppm or something. So if he does sit in that 25, 30-minute Leniu role, he could be a pretty decent option. I'm not super confident of seeing him there, but just keep an eye out for him.
Yeah, because anything over 30 is a decent chunk of minutes to take away
Mm.
from these guys. Hey, yeah, so I can see the risk there for sure. Mitch Kenny there you have as a fairly low minute. So we'll like in terms of not getting the 80 on a week-to-week basis, because some of those numbers for him, even with 80 minutes, are pretty terrible, aren't they? In the low 20s and stuff like that. Dane Laurie, he don't even think he deserves a spot in the 25 apparently. So we'll move on from him. Moses Leota at 472. Try scoring hero in the final, but no interest here. Lasati, and yeah, he's in that sort of top 30 that we shouldn't see, I imagine, this year. Jerome Luai at 567. Do you see anyone buying him?
No, a lot of rookie players might be tempted to buy him. Guys like him and Ezra Mam don't score the points but have the big name. But yeah, they'll inject themselves, but they don't have the huge stats that you'd want from a 5'8", like a Dylan Brown, who has tons of tackles, a lot of tackle busts, and all that stuff. So Jerome Luai is a very good player. It's that he just doesn't quite have the game style to translate well into fantasy. And next to Cleary, who does, he kind of hogs all the stats.
Definitely. Sonny Luke will leave. Liam Martin, what are your thoughts on him at a 43 average?
Yeah, he was someone that I wasn't even looking at all until I got to this analysis. And then I started to remember a couple of people saying at times last year, oh, maybe we should grab Liam Martin because he looks like he'll do better and he's at a cheap price and blah, blah, blah. So I looked at it a bit. And it was a little bit surprised to find that he actually didn't play like under 60 minutes basically at all unless it was origin affected or injury affected. So if he does start the year sitting at about 70 minutes, he might have like 3 or 4 points of value, but you don't really expect Liam Martin to play 80 minutes for 6 weeks straight to make the money that you want. So I
Yep.
don't think he's a buy.
No, they want him at important times, don't they? They want him fit and firing at finals. I probably personally see it being Sorensen, the guy that plays the bigger minutes, and Martin, they're really keeping as fresh as possible. He'll play Origin as well. So they're in the business of winning premierships, and Martin's that strike guy that we know that dominates in Origin and dominates in finals time. So yeah, he's one of those guys that if he was an 80-minute guy every week, then yes, please. But it's not going to happen. Taylan May, we were talking just beforehand that we probably wish that he was a fair bit cheaper because he's an absolute gun.
Yeah, 600K. and he didn't even play last year. What a ripoff. Surely you give him to us for like 450 or something like all these other guys around that price who uh I think he'll do well this year. I mean, any outside back in the Penrith team, you almost can just slap a 40 average on them and upwards.
Yes.
So, like, as long as he's not too hampered, well, not hampered, but say not full 100% performance first year back from ACL injury, he might still be somebody we look at after Origin as a gun to finish the season, but probably less likely than others, and definitely not to start the year.
Yep. Jesse McLean at 370k kind of priced himself out of contention, even if there were an injury, most likely. Tyrone Peachy, similar to that as well, 512. He had too good of a season last year. Brad Snyder at 468. We're kind of getting him at what he ended up at after that lovely rookie season that we all had him in our sides, right?
Yeah, 468k, 34 average. He kind of did that at the Raiders, and then he still wasn't that fantastic of a scorer. If you look at his average of 34, like he made his money, but he wasn't exciting about it. So even though it's Penrith, he's just not going to make any money during Origin.
Yeah. Lindsay Smith at 510, so expensive, but yeah, did a great job in the minutes that he got. That's probably where there could be some value if they decide that one of these, Liam Henrys or Mav Guy or the young up and comers have a little bit more value than what Lindsay did. Like his work rate was great, but do they need a little bit more punch off the bench with some minutes? That's probably the big question mark coming into this season for Panthers. So keep an eye out on Lindsay's minutes, I'd say. Scott Sorensen, my boy. I'm getting a little bit colder on him. I don't know if it's just like I'm looking at the NRL finals games and he very clearly played sort of around that 60 minutes, and there were games he didn't score too well. There's one he scored 56 fantasy, but I think I'm getting colder feet just because I think Luai and Martin gets the massive minutes in those games, and they don't need to with Sorensen. But I think Sorensen's going to be that sort of closer to 80-minute guy for the regular season. Where are you at with him?
Yeah, he's not somebody I want to touch if Garner's on the bench, put it that way. So
Yes.
he had a lot of games that he played 80 last year, but he also had a lot of games where he played 65 or 60 and stuff like that. So for that reason, I've got both him and Martin at that average 70 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
but in one game it could be Martin plays 80 and he plays 60 or
Yeah.
swap, depending on what the game. And as you said, in the big games, Liam Martin stands up. The Storm, what do they start with? They start with the Storm and another strong team in the first three games.
Yeah.
That could be, yeah,
Sawmills,
the Broncos.
Broncos.
There you go. So that could be two games where Liam Martin plays 80 and Sorensen plays 60. So for me, it's not really somebody I want to play with around at that price.
Yep. Very fair. Isaac Tongo at 678. Man, he's expensive, but man, he's good. Thoughts?
I basically put him in the Dane Gagai bracket. Don't touch until Origin or after or whatever. But somebody pointed out for some reason that he did really well when Stephen Crichton was out. And I had a look. He's had 5 games on the right center position next to Cleary, which is what you want in fantasy. If you're next to Cleary, stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
And he averaged 61 points there. It's only 5 game sample, but I mean, in a Panthers backline next to Cleary, I mean, he could do really well. So I don't expect him to average 61. No, you can't do that for a center. You can't. It's hard to project them over 50. But I mean, Tungo's that sort of guy who has averaged close to 50 in the past. And if he's on Cleary's side, does he get a little bump? It's just so much money to start the season though. So I personally can't do it.
Yeah.
But if you're wanting just a fun team for some reason, or not that got no idea what to do with the basements and then nothing until the premium options, maybe he's a guy for you.
That's fair. The amount of people I've seen comment or say to me that they're going nowhere near Tungo just for the way that he deals with his medical world, with he doesn't deal with modern medicine. So they're like, nah, never going near him again. But he's so good, and he will be one of those sort of top 3 or 4 centers that you'll want by the end of the year. I think that's pretty clear. Brian To'o at 609. He has a really, really strange last sort of 4 or 5 years, hey, averages. Did you look into that? It's pretty crazy.
I can't remember what he averaged in 2022, but I remember it was a drop from that monster 2021 season where I think he averaged close to 60. I
Yeah.
think that season was the one where they decided everybody was too powerful, we're going to nerf tackle breaks. But yeah, let's just have a look at those seasons. So 2023, he averaged um
44.
he averaged 44. 2022 averaged 39, only 50% try scoring rate. Did have one slightly injury affected game. 2021 averaged basically 60. Like he was unstoppable that year. In
Yeah.
that year where the Penrith juggernaut was rolling and the Six Agains were rolling and all the teams that weren't winning just fell over and died from exhaustion, he absolutely dominated. So I think there's room for him to go up a bit because I mean he's a fantastic player, but I don't know if he's gonna hit amazing levels again. Like he'd have to have a Greg Marju type of season, and even then, that's only low 50s. So probably not one I want to start the year with.
I think I don't know if you check there. I think he had a 1 per game try scoring rate anyway, or close to it. So last
Mm.
year. So it's hard to go better than that, isn't it? Um, yeah, it's just not like we keep looking at him like, oh, he's going to be that top gun 700K guy, but he's only done it once. So it's hard to go anywhere near it. Sunil Turuva, is he kind of at his peak, do you think, or is there room for growth there?
I mean, when you look at the Penrith backline and he's the cheapest, you probably think, oh, wow, there's somewhere for him to go. But I mean, he had a pretty good rookie year. The way where he could potentially improve is tackle busts were good, meters were good, or line breaks were good, but for a Penrith outside back, a 40% try scoring rate seems kind of low. So if he does well, he could push up a little bit, but I don't see it being enough to really entice me.
Yeah, definitely. And then Isaiah Yoda finished at 870K. It's a lot of Bicky, but 63.3 was the average. He was the most consistent guy in the whole game. And then even scored some tries at certain points as well. So he has that ability to do that. And pretty much the only guy, the only middle that plays 80 minutes week in, week out. Even Jake Trbojevic doesn't do it these days as much. So is there a world where it's worth starting with Isaiah? They don't have the buy in round 3 like they did last year, which I think kind of turned a few of us off. Any thoughts?
I think he's a very strong option. I just don't know whether you want him as much as Payne Haas, who's just lost Flegler and Palacia. Like
Yeah,
in
okay.
another year, I would have them pinned equal. I think the ceiling is about where Yo's sitting. If
Okay.
you play him 80 minutes every single week, as I said in the stats, he can average just over 65, but also he won't do that every game. He'll have a 70-minute game once a month, but mostly he'll play that 80. Haas, however, I mean, we've seen when he first came out in like 2020, 2021, he was playing ridiculous minutes and averaging like 72. So his ceiling is higher than Yo's for me, and that's why I'd prefer him slightly. But if you wanted to go a bit different for some reason and still get really good consistency, it's really hard to find someone more consistent than Yo.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. That's a good way to leave this Panthers one. Guys, they're going to be a fun team. At some point, you're going to want these guys in your team. It's just hard right now, given how well they play each and every week, that they're so high priced. And until we get some type of drop off, there might only be one guy. Like, maybe they just score a lot of tries down the right. And something, not much happens down the left for like 3 or 4 weeks, and you get a little bit of a discount, and that could be the time to just go, get them. But other than sort of the top guys in Cleary, Sorensen, and Isaiah Yo, we might have to wait a little bit until we kind of build up the cash stocks and build up our team value to get the Tungos and the like there, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's Cleary and then Watch.
Yeah. And the main issue then is, if you're building up that cash over the first sort of 6 to 8 weeks, then they have the buy in round 16 and 19 if they're a non-origin guy. It does hurt a little bit unless you're kind of pretty well set up for those big buys in 16, 19, and you can use the other Panthers guys in your team to cover like 14, 17, 20 and gets good
Yeah.
scores around that. Then that's probably the way to look at it. But yeah, they're an interesting team. It's so hard to get some value out of these guys with how well they've been going. So let's leave it at that one. Leave it with that one for the Panthers. You can see down the bottom there, we're off to the Rabbitohs and the Raiders for our next couple. Thanks for being here, guys. So we're cracking into this preseason. We have the app now available and ready to go. So probably, I think it was the 23rd or something last year. So they're a little bit early on everything for us this year, which is good. Thank you, NRL.com. Get making your teams. I'm sure you'll be sending us your early thoughts and any questions. So get in the Discord as well. I'll have to start putting the link in the description. But thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.